Imagine. I walk into the car dealership where my brother-in-law works, and he suddenly yells, "Get out of here! You can't afford our cars!" He calls security to throw me out like a loser. But instead, his boss appears, glances at my brother-in-law, and coldly says, "This gentleman's Rolls-Royce has already arrived, and you're fired." My brother-in-law's betrayal turned into justice's revenge. But that was only the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The Camry's engine ticked as I parked on the street, Glenn's Porsche Cayenne occupying the driveway like a territorial claim. February evening light caught the vehicle's glossy black paint, and there was Glenn, chamois in hand, making slow circles across the hood. He saw me approach, but didn't stop polishing. "Virgil, you're early. Just picked this beauty up yesterday. Cayenne Turbo, 110,000. Can you imagine?" I shifted the small gift bag containing books for the grandchildren. "It's very nice, Glenn. Are Lula and the kids inside?" He smirked. That expression I'd come to recognize over the past 3 years. "They're inside. You can park on the street? Wouldn't want your Camry dripping oil on my driveway." Through the front window, Ethan and Sophie waved. Their clothes struck me immediately. Ethan's shirt had a frayed collar. Sophie's pants were too short at the ankles. I waved back, watching Glenn position himself between me and the front door, forcing me to admire his acquisition a moment longer. The house smelled like roasted chicken and something bitter I couldn't identify. Lula appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dad, good to see you." She hugged me quickly, then stepped back as Glenn entered behind me, filling the doorway. The dining room felt expensive in that deliberately curated way. Abstract art I suspected she'd never have chosen herself, chairs that prioritized appearance over comfort. Glenn took the head of the table despite my presence. The children sat across from me, quiet and watchful. "So, Virgil, how's that studio treating you? Still hear the neighbors through the walls?" Glenn poured himself wine without offering me any. "It suits my needs. I couldn't live like that. A man needs space. But I guess at your age, downsizing makes sense. Right, honey?" He looked at Lula. She cut a piece of chicken with careful precision. "Everyone has different situations." Sophie started to ask me something, but Glenn talked over her. "This Cayenne, Virgil, it's got a twin-turbo V8, 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Of course, I don't know if you'd appreciate that. Coming from... What year is your Camry? 2015? 2014? Even better." He laughed, and Lula smiled weakly into her wine glass. The meal continued in this pattern. Every topic Glenn touched became a referendum on worth and status. He mentioned the Cayenne specifications 3 times by my count. When Sophie finally managed to ask about my week, Glenn interrupted. "Retirement boredom, right? Nothing but time. Must be strange after working retail all those years." I'd owned a successful hardware store for 40 years, sold it in 2023, but Glenn preferred his version of my history. I watched Lula refill his glass before it emptied, an automatic gesture. She'd learned his rhythms, anticipated his needs before he voiced them. This wasn't the daughter who'd argued philosophy with me over breakfast, who'd questioned everything, who'd wanted to teach literature. "Actually," I said, "I was thinking about Ethan's education. Your mother mentioned math is challenging this year." Ethan looked up, hopeful. "I was considering tutoring programs, or perhaps a school with smaller classes. I'd be happy to—" Glenn set down his fork with deliberate care. "We provide for our children. We don't need handouts. It's not a handout. It's help from their grandfather. We don't need charity from someone living in a studio apartment on fixed income. This conversation is over." His voice had gone cold, precise. Lula's fork paused halfway to her mouth, then continued. No defense. No intervention. The children stared at their plates. I counted 3 times during that dinner when Lula could have spoken for me. She chose silence each time. After the meal, I asked to see the children's rooms. Sophie's desk had broken drawer handles, held together with electrical tape. Ethan's sneakers, kicked under his bed, had worn completely through the soles, but the master bedroom door stood half open, and I glimpsed the California King with its pristine white linens. Price tags still attached, dangling from the duvet corner. $800. The number was clearly visible. In the hallway, Sophie whispered, "Grandpa, do you like Dad's new car?" "It's nice, sweetheart. How's school?" "Fine. Dad says we might get new shoes next month." I looked at her worn sneakers, the canvas splitting from the rubber. "Next month?" "He says the car payment comes first. It's okay. These still fit." I found Glenn in the living room, scrolling his phone. "Thank you for dinner. I'll call next week about—" "Lula will let you know when we're free. We're busy people. Not everyone has endless retirement time." "Glenn, I'd like to spend more time with my grandchildren." "We'll see. Bye, Virgil." He turned away, conversation finished. Through the window, as I walked to my car, I saw his arm slide around Lula's waist, possessive and controlling. She leaned into him, or maybe she just didn't resist. The drive back to Kendall took 25 minutes through evening traffic. My studio apartment greeted me with its familiar quiet. Small, yes, but meticulously organized. Everything in its place, nothing wasted. I made tea and sat at my desk, the laptop casting blue light across the room. My banking app loaded slowly. The balance appeared, 23,706.34. I'd sold my business 18 months ago for $24.5 million. Investments, careful living, and time had adjusted the number. I closed the laptop without logging out fully. On the wall, a framed photo caught the lamplight. Payne Hardware's grand opening in 1987. I was 30 years old, standing beside the entrance I'd designed myself, wearing my father's watch. I'd built something. They thought that made me weak. Glenn saw the modest apartment and assumed poverty. Lula had stopped asking about my finances years ago, convinced I'd mismanaged the sale money somehow. I opened a fresh document on my laptop, titled it Family Observations, February 2025, and began typing. Children's clothing conditions, luxury bedroom items, Glenn's spending patterns, the Porsche's timing. Tomorrow, I decided I'd start watching more carefully. Not with anger, that would cloud judgment. With precision, the way I'd analyzed market trends and supplier contracts for 4 decades. Glenn had made a miscalculation. He'd assumed I was finished, powerless, irrelevant. I saved the document, created a password-protected folder, and went to bed. But sleep came slowly, images cycling through my mind. Sophie's taped drawer handles, Ethan's destroyed shoes, that $800 price tag swinging gently in the air conditioning's breeze. 3 days later, I sat at my desk, while morning light stretched across my laptop screen. The coffee beside me had gone cold an hour ago. I'd been researching private investigators in Miami-Dade County since 6 a.m., reading reviews, checking state licenses, cross-referencing complaint databases. My business training served me well. Vet your contractors thoroughly before engagement. I'd narrowed the list to 3 candidates and scheduled consultations. The first 2 felt wrong. One was too eager, promising results before understanding the scope. The other quoted $8,000 for work I estimated should cost half that. But the third candidate, Marcus Reynolds, agreed to meet me that afternoon at a cafe in Coconut Grove. The location was strategic, equidistant from Kendall and Coral Gables, neutral territory, public enough to be safe, but quiet enough for discretion. I arrived 15 minutes early, selected a corner table, and waited. Reynolds appeared precisely on time. Mid-50s, gray threading through his hair, clothes neat but not expensive. He ordered black coffee and sat without preamble. "You said this was family-related." I appreciated the directness. "I need information about my son-in-law. His behavior changed. My daughter seems different. I need facts, not assumptions." "What specifically concerns you?" "He's spending beyond his means, flaunting wealth while his children wear worn clothes. Either he's hiding income or hiding debt. I need to know which." Reynolds pulled out a small notebook. 2 weeks, full surveillance and background check, $3,500. I'll need his schedule. Vehicle details, workplace. I'd prepared everything, wrote it out the night before on a single sheet of paper. Glenn's work hours at Prestige Motors, Miami, the Porsche's license plate, his typical lunch routine. I slid the paper across the table. "I'll pay half now, half on delivery. I want daily updates. Nothing in writing until final report." He nodded once. "Cash preferred for the deposit." I handed him an envelope containing $2,000. We shook hands, and he left first. I finished my cold coffee, watching him drive away in an unmarked sedan. A professional. That's what I needed. The days crawled. Reynolds sent brief text messages. Subject at workplace. Lunch meeting observed. Evening routine monitored. Nothing substantial, just confirmation of activity. I maintained my normal schedule. Grocery shopping on Tuesday, library on Thursday, a walk around the neighborhood each evening. If anyone was watching me, they'd see nothing unusual. 10 days after hiring him, Reynolds called. We should meet. Same location, 2 p.m. The folder he slid across the table was thicker than I'd expected. Photographs, time-stamped, showing Glenn with a younger woman. Late 20s, professionally dressed. 3 different restaurants. 2 hotels. The body language needed no interpretation. His hand on her lower back, their faces close across a table, her fingers touching his arm. Her name's Vanessa Torres, sales associate at his dealership. Based on digital footprints and observed patterns, I'd estimate 8 months. I studied each photograph methodically, forcing myself to see evidence rather than betrayal. You're certain? Photographs don't lie. Restaurants, Morton's, Zuma, Casa Tua, hotels, 4 Seasons twice, Mandarin Oriental once. He uses a credit card she doesn't see, different from the one he uses for family purchases, which brings me to the financial component. Reynolds produced a second set of documents. Background check revealed personal loans under his name only. Approximately $60,000 borrowed in the past year across 3 lenders. Credit cards maxed at their limits. Combined with your daughter's mortgage and the vehicle loans visible in public records, you're looking at total family debt around $340,000. I absorbed this carefully. Does my daughter know about the personal loans? Nothing in joint accounts reflects them. He's managing those payments separately, which means either hidden income or he's robbing Peter to pay Paul. What's your assessment? Reynolds leaned back, choosing his words. Man's living beyond his means to support 2 lifestyles. The math doesn't work long term. Your grandchildren's household is a financial house of cards. 1 missed payment, 1 emergency, and it collapses. I paid him the remaining $1,700 in cash, thanked him for his thoroughness, and drove home with the folder on my passenger seat. But my work wasn't finished. I needed to see it myself, needed that first-hand confirmation. The following Tuesday, I positioned myself at the bar of a Brickell restaurant Reynolds had documented. Arrived at 11:30, half an hour before Glenn's typical lunch schedule. Ordered coffee, took a seat with a mirror view of the dining room. My phone rested on the bar, angled to look casual. Glenn arrived at 12:15 with Vanessa. They were laughing, his hand on her lower back, the same possessive gesture he used with Lula. He pulled out her chair, ordered wine without checking prices, leaned close when speaking. I photographed them through my phone's camera, pretending to scroll messages. One image captured his wedding ring clearly visible while his fingers intertwined, with hers across the white tablecloth. The wine he ordered cost $95. I saw the sommelier's presentation. Glenn barely glanced at the label before approving. This was a man drowning his family in debt for ego and affair, and neither mistress nor wife understood the mathematical reality closing in around them. I left $20 for my $8 coffee and exited before they noticed. The photographs joined Reynolds's file in my encrypted laptop folder. That evening I spread everything across my desk. Investigators' reports, my own photographs, financial data I'd compiled. I built a timeline on notebook paper, tracking the progression. Affair began 8 months prior. Debt accelerated 6 months ago. Porsche purchased 1 month ago. The pattern was mathematical in its clarity. I researched Prestige Motors Miami thoroughly. Their inventory, their sales team, their ownership structure. Marcus Webb owned the dealership's second-generation proprietor. Reputation for high-end discretion. And there, buried in their online inventory, I found it. A Rolls-Royce Cullinan, listed for 7 months at $465,000. 7 months unsold. An embarrassment for a luxury dealership. The commission on that vehicle would be substantial. $40,000, perhaps $50,000. Glenn hadn't managed to move it despite his position as senior sales manager. What if a serious buyer wanted that specific car? What if that buyer insisted on working directly with the owner for discretion? What if that buyer was me? I began drafting an email to Marcus Webb, choosing each word carefully. Professional investor seeking investment-grade vehicle for personal collection. Immediate cash purchase capability. Discrete transaction preferred. Request for private consultation with ownership. No mention of Glenn. No hint of connection. I wrote and rewrote the email for 2 hours, adjusting tone, ensuring credibility. My business correspondence skills proved useful. I'd written thousands of emails to suppliers, always striking the right balance of professionalism and authority. Around 9 p.m., I called Lula. Brief check-in, nothing unusual. Just calling to see how you're doing. Her voice sounded distracted. Fine, Dad. Busy with the kids' schedules. Is everything okay? You seem stressed lately. The defensiveness came immediately. Everything's fine. Glenn's working hard. We're fine. If you ever need anything, I have to go. Talk soon. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in the darkness, only my laptop's glow illuminating the desk. The email to Marcus Webb was complete, but unsent. I'd wait until morning, make it look like an early business inquiry from someone starting their day with purpose. On my desk, I arranged the materials. Reynolds's final report, my supplementary photographs, financial analysis, dealership research. Beside them, I placed a handwritten list titled Objectives. 3 items. 1. Expose Glenn professionally. 2. Protect Lula and grandchildren financially. 3. Ensure grandchildren's future. Not revenge, strategy. Not anger, methodology. I saved everything to the encrypted folder labeled Family Security 2025, then created a physical backup in the locked drawer where I kept my father's watch and my business sale documents. Tomorrow morning, I'd send the email about the Rolls-Royce. Timing mattered in business. Always had. My finger hovered over the trackpad, then moved to Save Draft instead. I'd spent 40 years learning patience. Another 12 hours wouldn't matter. But the foundation was laid, the research complete, the approach mapped. Glenn thought he knew who I was, retired, diminished, irrelevant. He was about to learn the difference between downsizing and strategic positioning. The cursor hovered over the contact form on Prestige Motors, Miami's website. Wednesday morning, 9:17. I'd composed the message 3 times already, refining each word until the tone hit exactly right. Professional enough to be credible, vague enough to intrigue. I typed the name into the form, Robert Hutchinson. The email address I'd created yesterday specifically for this purpose loaded automatically. Subject line, Inquiry, investment-grade vehicle for private collection. The message referenced interest in unique luxury vehicles with appreciation potential, mentioned Rolls-Royce inventory specifically, emphasized discretion. No mention of Glenn, no hint of family connection. Pure business inquiry from what appeared to be a serious buyer with serious money. I read it 3 times, checking for identifying details, anything that might connect Robert Hutchinson to Virgil Payne. Satisfied, I moved the cursor to Send. The email whooshed away into digital space. First move made. I closed the laptop and made fresh coffee, forcing myself through normal morning routine, reading news, checking investments, organizing paperwork, but my eyes kept drifting to the laptop, waiting. The response came at 2:43 that afternoon. Marcus Webb himself had replied, not a sales associate. The message carried professional enthusiasm. Yes, they had the Cullinan Series 2, $465,000, exceptional condition, available for immediate purchase. Webb included his direct office line and suggested a private showing away from typical showroom traffic for serious collectors who prefer discrete transactions. I read between the lines easily enough. Webb recognized serious money and wanted to handle this personally, cutting out the sales floor commission structure entirely, which meant bypassing Glenn completely. Perfect. I waited 2 hours before responding, couldn't seem too eager, too desperate. My reply was brief. Preferred meeting with ownership directly, available this week. Cash transaction possible for the right vehicle. Asked about his schedule. His response arrived within 30 minutes. Tomorrow afternoon, private office meeting, bring identification for paperwork preparation. I spent the evening preparing, visited my bank, obtained a cashier's check for $100,000 made out to Prestige Motors, Miami. Purchased a leather portfolio from an office supply store. Nothing too expensive, but professional looking. Selected tomorrow's clothing. Business casual. Neat, but not flashy. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the dealership, but parked 2 blocks away in a public garage. Didn't want the Camry visible at the building yet. That reveal would come later, on my terms. The walk to Prestige Motors took 8 minutes. I entered through the side entrance Webb had specified in his email, avoiding the main showroom where Glenn worked. The receptionist expected me, smiled professionally, and escorted me directly to Webb's second-floor office. The space overlooked the showroom through one-way glass. Webb rose to greet me, firm handshake, offering coffee, gesturing to leather chairs positioned across from his mahogany desk. Automotive photography and sales awards decorated the walls. Through the glass below, I could see the showroom floor, see Glenn talking to a customer near the BMW section, gesturing animatedly, confident in his element. See the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, positioned prominently under spotlights, its black exterior gleaming. Webb began the standard luxury sales pitch, but I interrupted politely. "Mr. Webb, I've done my research. That vehicle's been in your inventory 7 months. I'm prepared to make this simple for both of us." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You've done your homework." "Yes, it's been a showcase piece, a remarkable vehicle waiting for the right buyer." That's one way to describe it. I reached inside my jacket, removed the envelope from the inner pocket. Not fumbling from a wallet, but deliberately prepared, slid it across his desk. "I'm prepared to deposit $100,000 today, remaining $365 on delivery. But I have conditions." Webb opened the envelope, examined the cashier's check. His expression shifted. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was real money on his desk. "I'm listening." "First, this transaction stays between us until delivery day. No sales floor involvement until I collect the vehicle." He hesitated. "That's unusual." "May I ask why?" "I value privacy. Too many luxury purchases become public immediately. Dealers pressuring for referrals, family asking questions, associates making assumptions. I make decisions quietly, execute publicly when I'm ready." Webb studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "And the second condition? I want to collect the vehicle personally during normal business hours, unannounced to your staff. I want the authentic showroom experience at pickup." His expression suggested confusion, but he was looking at 7 months of inventory overhead, sitting on his showroom floor in a substantial owner's commission. "That can be arranged." We spent the next 40 minutes on paperwork, initialing forms, reviewing delivery timeline. 4 weeks for final detailing and preparation. Early April collection date. As the meeting concluded, conversation turned casual. Webb mentioned pride in his operation, his team's professionalism. I kept my voice carefully offhand. "You have an excellent operation here. My daughter's husband works for you, actually. Glenn." Webb's expression shifted subtly. Recognition, then careful neutrality. "Glenn. Yes, he's one of our managers. Your family?" "By marriage. We don't discuss business much. I prefer keeping family and finances separate. I'm sure you understand." "I see." I stood, gathering my portfolio. "It will be interesting to see his reaction when I collect the Rolls-Royce. I haven't mentioned my interest in luxury vehicles to family. Should be quite a surprise." Webb's face suggested he was beginning to understand this wasn't a simple transaction. But the contract was signed, deposit made, money secured. He extended his hand. "We'll call you 48 hours before delivery." I left through the same side entrance, walked back to the parking garage at a measured pace. Only when I was seated alone in the Camry did I allow the tension to release from my shoulders. I sat there for 3 minutes, processing what I'd set in motion before starting the engine. Back at the apartment, I opened my laptop's calendar app, marked the delivery date 4 weeks forward, early April, created countdown reminders at weekly intervals. Below the date, I typed a single phrase, "Glenn's Reckoning," then immediately deleted it. No written evidence of motive, even in private files. I reviewed my accounts. 100,000 deposited, 365 reserved in a separate account for final payment. Still left 23.2 million in investments untouched. The cost of justice, manageable. I looked at the framed photo of my hardware store's grand opening, the patient building of something valuable, brick by brick, decision by decision. This was the same process, just different construction. 4 weeks until Glenn discovered his father-in-law wasn't a powerless retired man living on scraps. 4 weeks until the truth became visible. I closed the laptop, feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years since selling my business. Anticipation of watching careful plans reach completion. The phone rang at 10:07 Thursday morning. Marcus Webb's voice, professional and measured. "Mr. Payne, your vehicle is ready. When would you like to collect?" I glanced at the clock on my desk. "I'll be there within the hour." "Excellent. Everything is prepared." After hanging up, I moved through my preparation with deliberate care. Removed my decent watch. Replaced it with a cheap digital one from the back of my desk drawer. Selected the oldest jeans I owned, a plain gray jacket with worn elbows, scuffed work boots I'd kept from my hardware store days. Studied myself in the mirror. Perfect image of a modest retiree. Exactly what Glenn expected to see. Exactly what would make the contrast devastating. I grabbed the Camry's keys and left. During the 30-minute drive to the dealership, I hit a red light at an intersection. My reflection appeared in the side mirror. 63 years old, wearing clothes that looked like thrift store finds, driving a 10-year-old sedan. But in my eyes, I saw something that hadn't been there in 2 years. Purpose. The light changed. I continued forward. Prestige Motors appeared ahead, its glass walls revealing the showroom's interior, gleaming vehicles under designer lighting, sales staff in sharp suits, the controlled luxury of serious money. I pulled the Camry into the visitor parking area, no longer hiding, parking prominently near the entrance. Through the glass, I spotted Glenn near the Mercedes section, mid-conversation with a middle-aged couple, gesturing at a vehicle's features with practiced enthusiasm. I entered through the main entrance. The door chimed softly. The receptionist looked up with a professional smile, started to greet me. I walked past her toward the center of the showroom, eyes fixed on the Rolls-Royce Cullinan positioned under spotlights like a museum piece. Movement caught Glenn's peripheral vision. He glanced over mid-sentence with his customers, did a visible double-take, and his expression shifted rapidly. Confusion, then irritation, then something like embarrassment that someone from his poor family was here, potentially damaging his professional image. I circled the Rolls-Royce slowly, examining it the way a potential buyer would. Ran my hand along the hood's mirror, finish, peered through windows at the cream leather interior, checked the door handles. Glenn excused himself from his customers and approached with forced casualness, jaw visibly tight. "Virgil, what are you doing here?" I turned, expression neutral. "Looking at this vehicle, it's impressive." His face darkened a shade. "This isn't a place for browsing. These are serious vehicles for serious buyers." Other staff members were beginning to notice our interaction. Conversations quieted. Attention shifted. I continued examining the Rolls-Royce. Opened the driver's door. Unlocked for showroom display. "I was wondering about a test drive." Glenn's control snapped like overstressed wire. Voice rising. "Test drive? You can't afford the insurance payment on this car, let alone the purchase price." The showroom went silent. All eyes on us now. Glenn's customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The receptionist froze mid-phone call. I didn't move, hand still on the door handle. Expression deliberately calm. "You need to leave. Now. You're embarrassing yourself." I remained exactly where I stood, examining the steering wheel's leather wrap with apparent interest. Glenn's voice filled the showroom. "You can't even afford insurance to test drive this vehicle. You think someone living in a studio apartment can handle $465,000? Other salespeople watched, uncertain whether to intervene. A well-dressed customer near the Bentley section shifted uncomfortably. Glenn spun toward the security desk. "Jason, we need assistance here." The security guard, a man in his 40s, stood from his desk with obvious uncertainty, looking between Glenn and me. His hand went to his radio, but he moved slowly. Something felt wrong about the situation. "Remove this gentleman. He's disturbing actual customers." Jason started walking toward us, but his pace was cautious, hesitant. Glenn was practically shouting now. "Get him out. He's wasting everyone's time. You can't be here if you're not a serious buyer." The entire showroom had frozen. Upstairs, Marcus Webb's office door opened. Webb descended the stairs deliberately, each footstep echoing in the silent space. Every eye shifted to him. His expression was cold professional assessment. He reached the showroom floor, stopped, surveyed the scene. Glenn red-faced and agitated, me calm beside the Rolls-Royce with my hand still on its door. Jason caught halfway between us, other staff and customers watching like witnesses to an accident. Webb's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Glenn, my office. Now." Glenn spun toward him. "Mr. Webb, this man—" Webb raised a single hand, silencing him. "I said now." Then he turned to me. "Mr. Payne, apologies for the disturbance. Your vehicle is ready, and the paperwork is prepared." Glenn's face drained of color. "Vehicle?" The word came out barely above a whisper. Webb continued, addressing me while Glenn stood frozen. "The Rolls-Royce Cullinan you purchased is prepared for delivery. Title transfer documents are in my office. Jason, please bring Mr. Payne's paperwork." Jason understood immediately, nodded, and headed upstairs. Webb finally looked at Glenn. "You just attempted to have my customer physically removed. A customer who purchased our most expensive inventory." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You're terminated. Collect your personal items. You have 30 minutes. The showroom remained absolutely still. Glenn's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound emerged. Other salespeople stared at the floor, unwilling to witness their colleagues' destruction. "HR will contact you about your final paycheck and benefits termination. Leave your building access card at reception." Webb turned to me. "Please, let's complete your paperwork upstairs." I nodded, following him toward the stairs without looking at Glenn. Jason returned with a folder, handed it to Webb. As I reached the third step, Glenn found his voice. Raw, breaking, desperate. "This isn't over. You hear me, old man? This isn't finished. You'll regret this." I paused briefly, didn't turn around. Webb spoke coldly without looking back. "Glenn, security will escort you out, if necessary. Leave now." I continued upward, leaving Glenn standing alone in the center of the showroom, surrounded by witnesses to his humiliation, beside the vehicle he couldn't sell that his father-in-law had just purchased with cash. From Webb's office window, I watched through the one-way glass as Glenn stumbled toward his desk. Other salespeople deliberately avoided meeting his eyes, suddenly busy with paperwork, phone calls, anything that let them pretend they hadn't seen what just happened. Webb closed the office door behind us, set the folder on his desk. "That was uglier than I anticipated," he said quietly. I sat in the same leather chair I'd occupied 4 weeks ago. He made his choices. Webb slid the documents across to me. As I began reviewing the title transfer paperwork, Glenn appeared below, carrying a small cardboard box, walking toward the exit with the mechanical movements of someone in shock. He didn't look up at the office, didn't look at anyone, just walked. The door chimed as he left. I signed the final document and handed it back to Webb. Glenn's Porsche pulled into the driveway at 1:47. Through the kitchen window, Lula glanced at the clock, confusion crossing her face. Hours too early. The garage door rumbled. She heard his footsteps, heavier than usual. Then he appeared carrying a small cardboard box, tie loosened, face still flushed with residual anger. "I've been fired." He set the box down hard on the kitchen counter. "Unjustly. Complete injustice." Lula froze, dish towel in hand. "What? What happened?" "Wealthy client complained about my sales approach. Management took his side. Politics. Always politics in these places." She moved closer, searching his face. "But you're one of their best. Doesn't matter when rich people complain. They chose money over loyalty." He loosened his tie further, played the role of wronged employee with practiced gestures. Her phone buzzed on the counter between them. Text from Marissa, friend who worked downtown near the dealership. "Did your dad just buy a Rolls-Royce at Glenn's work?" Lula stared at the screen, read it twice, looked up at Glenn. "My father bought a car at your dealership?" Glenn's expression shifted, caught, calculating. He pivoted fast. "That's what this is about. Your father. He showed up this morning, humiliated me publicly, somehow purchased an expensive vehicle, got me fired. My father? How does he have money for—" "Exactly." Glenn seized the opening. "Where did he get it? Something's wrong here. Dark money. Maybe illegal. I don't know. But something isn't right." Lula's hand reached for her phone. "I need to call him." "You're calling him?" Glenn's voice rose. "I'm your husband. He destroyed my career, and you're taking his side?" but she was already dialing. 3 rings, then his voice, calm and measured. Lula, I was expecting your call. Where did you get money for a Rolls Royce? Glenn says you got him fired. I'll explain everything, face to face. Can you meet this afternoon? Why not just tell me now? Because you deserve to see documentation. Proof of everything. 2 p.m. Coconut Grove Caf? She hesitated, Glenn watching her intently. Fine. 2 p.m. After hanging up, she turned to Glenn. I'm meeting him. I need to hear his side. Glenn's face darkened. His side? I'm your husband. You're choosing him over me? For the first time in years, she held her ground. I'm choosing to hear what he has to say. That's not choosing sides. She went to change clothes, leaving Glenn in the kitchen. Her hands shook as she selected a blouse from her closet. 20 minutes later, she backed her Honda out of the driveway. 3 cars back, Glenn's Porsche followed at careful distance. The caf? In Coconut Grove was moderately busy. Virgil sat at a corner table, back to the wall, leather folder beside his coffee. Lula arrived 7 minutes late, face tight with stress. Sat without greeting, Virgil began without preamble. 2 years ago, I sold my business. 7 hardware stores built over 40 years. Sale price, $23 million. Lula's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, anger. You've been rich for 2 years and said nothing? He slid documents across the table. Sale agreement, bank statements, tax returns, all legitimate, all legal. Lula's hands trembled as she read. I wanted to see who you really were. When I was poor, you didn't respect me. Glenn openly mocked me. You said nothing. We didn't mock. He produced more papers. Printed screenshots of Glenn's social media posts, ridiculing his broke father-in-law. Text messages to friends complaining about Virgil's pathetic financial state. One post from 3 months ago. Fael still driving that sad Camry. Can barely afford gas, probably. Lula's face crumbled. I didn't know he... Then Virgil placed the photographs on the table. Glenn with a younger woman, time-stamped, bodies angled toward each other in unmistakable intimacy. Restaurant tables, hotel entrance, his hand on her lower back. Her name is Vanessa Torres. These are from the past 8 months. Lula stared at the images, hands slowly covering her mouth. Tears tracked down her cheeks silently. How long? Her voice barely reached him. 8 months, while he told you the family couldn't afford new shoes for the children. More documents. Restaurant receipts charged to credit cards Lula had never seen. Financial analysis showing $340,000 in total family debt. A separate report detailing Glenn's hidden $22,000 credit card used exclusively for affair expenses. You hired someone to follow him? To spy on us? To protect you and my grandchildren. He slid across a financial projection chart. At the current debt rate, you'll face foreclosure within 18 months. Glenn's been spending on her while your children's needs go unmet. Lula oscillated between grief and defensive anger. Maybe he made mistakes, but he's my husband, father of my children. Your plan destroyed his career. How is that protecting us? Virgil leaned forward, voice firm but not harsh. I didn't destroy his career. His arrogance did. I bought a car. He chose to publicly humiliate a customer who happened to be his father-in-law. His choices have consequences. Silence stretched between them. Lula looked at the photographs again, the bank statements, the debt analysis. I need time to think. I can't process this all right now. Take the time you need. But know this. Those children deserve better than financial ruin and parents modeling disrespect. Lula gathered the papers, stuffing them into her purse with shaking hands. She left without another word. From his seat, Virgil watched her walk to her car. 3 spaces behind it, Glenn's Porsche sat with its driver slumped low in the seat. He'd followed her, watched through the window. Couldn't hear the words, but had seen the papers, seen her tears. Virgil pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, typed, Glenn knows she knows. Deleted it. No written evidence, even private. He finished his coffee slowly, paid cash, and drove back to Kendall in the Rolls-Royce. The vehicle still felt foreign, too large, too luxurious, but it had served its purpose. That evening, Lula arrived home 30 seconds before Glenn. She didn't confront him about following her. Went directly to the bedroom and locked the door. She spread the documents across the bed, studied them for hours. The photographs hurt most. Glenn's expression in them showed happiness she hadn't seen directed at her in years. Downstairs, Glenn scrolled through his phone. A message from a former colleague. Budget dealership in Hialeah was hiring. Lower prestige, lower pay, but immediate availability. He applied without hesitation. Money pressure was coming. He could feel it. 3 days later, Glenn started at the new position. Used car sales manager, $65,000 salary, 30% pay cut from his previous role. He told Lula it was a temporary adjustment while he looked for something better. That same evening, Virgil sat in the Rolls-Royce, parked outside a public park, watching sunset paint the Miami sky orange and purple. His phone showed a text from Lula, sent an hour earlier. "I need more time to think. Please don't contact Glenn directly." He typed his response carefully. "Take the time you need. I'm here when you're ready." What he didn't mention, he'd already scheduled a consultation with a family law attorney for next week. Patience had built his business, brick by brick, over 40 years. Patience would finish this. The attorney's office occupied the 20th floor of a downtown Miami tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, morning light sharp and clinical. Diane Costa sat across her mahogany desk, reviewing the folder Virgil had sent ahead. Organized with color-coded tabs, chronological summaries, the businessman's approach to a family crisis. She looked up, her expression professional, but not unkind. "Mr. Payne, this documentation is comprehensive. You've organized everything. I built a business on documentation. This is about protecting my family. With this evidence, adultery, financial deception, children's welfare at risk, your daughter has a strong position if she decides to file. The question is she ready?" Virgil's answer came without hesitation. "Not yet, but she will be. What can we do to prepare?" Diane explained Florida divorce law with practiced precision. The state operated on no-fault principles. Adultery alone didn't guarantee advantage, but a pattern of financial recklessness, demonstrably harming minor children's welfare? That mattered. Courts prioritized children's interests. We need financial forensics, professional CPA analysis, documenting every hidden dollar, every missed payment, every expense that should have gone to your grandchildren, but went elsewhere. That builds an undeniable case. The consultation lasted 90 minutes. Cost $400, the first of 7 such meetings, totaling $2,800 over the coming weeks. 2 days later, Virgil called Lula. The conversation moved carefully, like walking on ice. "How are you processing everything?" Her voice carried exhaustion. "I've been reviewing the documents, noticing things I missed before. He's been evasive about the new job. Won't tell me the actual salary. Says it's complicated. I've consulted with an attorney. Not to push you, but to understand options. There's something called financial forensic analysis. You hired an attorney? Consulted. To understand how to protect you and the children if you decide to proceed. With your permission, I'd like to hire a CPA to analyze your family finances professionally." Long pause. Traffic noise in the background suggested she was in her car. Somewhere Glenn wasn't. What would they need? Only what you can legally provide as account holder. Bank access, credit card statements, loan documents. Another pause. Longer. Then quietly. "Okay, do it." That afternoon, Virgil contacted a CPA firm specializing in divorce financial analysis. Paid a $4,200 retainer. Lula provided everything she could access. Joint account logins, credit card numbers, mortgage statements. The CPA promised a comprehensive report within 2 weeks. 12 days later, the report arrived via encrypted email. 42 pages of detailed analysis. Virgil printed it, sat at his kitchen table with coffee that went cold as he read. The numbers were worse than he'd imagined. Documented spending on the affair. $14,400 over 8 months. $1,800 monthly average for restaurants, hotels, gifts, jewelry for Vanessa that Lula never received. Hidden credit card opened without Lula's knowledge. $22,000 in balance at 24.9% interest. Minimum payments being skipped. 2 personal loans in Glenn's name only. $35,000 and $25,000. Used partially for the Porsche down payment, partially for affair expenses. The family mortgage, 3 months behind. Glenn had been intercepting bank notices. If the next payment was missed, foreclosure proceedings would begin. Children's college funds. Glenn had withdrawn $12,000 6 months ago. The money had never been explained to Lula. Total family debt, $340,000. Glenn's new reduced salary of $65,000 couldn't sustain the current debt load. The CPA's conclusion was stark. Financial collapse imminent without intervention. Recommend immediate debt counseling or dissolution of joint financial obligations. Virgil forwarded the report to Diane Costa, then called Lula. We need to meet. The financial analysis is complete. It's urgent. But before they could meet, the crisis accelerated on its own. The certified letter arrived at Lula's house on a Tuesday morning. Official bank letterhead, formal language, devastating content, notice of mortgage default. 30 days to cure deficiency or foreclosure proceedings would commence. That evening, after the children were in bed, Lula confronted Glenn in the kitchen. She held the letter like evidence at trial. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. You told me payments were current. Glenn's face shifted immediately to attack mode. Because I lost my income. Your father destroyed my career. The report says payments were missed even when you were working. His eyes narrowed. What report? She realized her mistake. The financial? You let your father investigate our finances? His voice climbed. You gave him access to our accounts. This is his plan, Lula. He wants to control you. Wants us to divorce so he can swoop in and save you. He paced the kitchen, gestures growing larger, voice filling the space. Or maybe he's showing me truth I refuse to see. Her voice came quieter than he expected, which made it land harder. I'm your husband, father of your children. You're choosing him over me. I'm choosing truth. I'm meeting with him tomorrow about the financial analysis. Glenn moved closer, physically dominating the space between them, but Lula stepped sideways around him to the doorway, asserted her right to move freely. You can't just... I can. And I am. She went to the bedroom, locked the door, then did something she'd never done before. Searched the room systematically. Found credit card statements stuffed between folded shirts in his dresser, loan documents in a shoebox on the closet shelf behind winter clothes. Under his side of the mattress, an envelope with receipts for jewelry she'd never received. She photographed everything with her phone. The next morning, she met Virgil at the same Coconut Grove cafe. This time she arrived with her own folder, her own evidence. She placed it on the table beside the CPA report he'd brought. I found loan documents last night. $60,000 he borrowed without telling me, and he withdrew money from the children's college funds. Virgil listened without interrupting. The bank letter says we could lose the house. My children's home. She looked directly at him. What do I do? He chose his words carefully, informing rather than commanding. The attorney says, with this evidence, you can file for divorce with a strong position on custody. The house could be protected through legal proceedings. Children's interests come first under Florida law. Her hands gripped her coffee cup. If I file, everything changes. His parents, our friends, everyone will know. They'll know the truth. Truth isn't shame. Hiding it is. Silence stretched between them. A full minute passed. Then Lula opened her phone, pulled up the number Virgil had sent her days ago. Diane Costa's office. Her finger hovered over the call button. 7 seconds of hesitation. Then she pressed it. Put the phone on speaker so Virgil could hear. Diane Costa Law, how may I help you? Lula's voice came clear and firm. I need to schedule a consultation with Ms. Costa regarding divorce proceedings. 3 days after Lula made the call, we sat in Diane Costa's conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Biscayne Bay, morning sun reflecting off the water in sharp points of light. Lula sat between Diane and me, hands folded on the polished table, wearing professional clothes borrowed from a friend. Diane slid a document across to Lula. Glenn's hired Richard Brenner. Brenner's known for intimidation tactics. This won't be simple. Lula's hands trembled, picking up the letter. 6 pages of aggressive demands. I read over her shoulder. Spousal support citing Lula's unemployment. 50% of marital assets, including the house. Shared custody with possibility of primary custody claim for Glenn. The final demand made my jaw tighten. Investigation into my suspicious financial involvement and potential manipulation of client. Threat to subpoena my financial records. Suggestion of improper influence over Lula's decision-making. How bad will it get? Lula's voice was small. He's demanding spousal support, half the assets, custody, threatening to investigate your father's finances. My finances are documented. Legally sound, I said. Diane nodded. I know, but Brenner will use discovery as a weapon. Make this expensive and exhausting. We need to be prepared for the long fight. A week later, we sat in Miami-Dade Family Court for the preliminary hearing. The courtroom was modern, fluorescent lit, impersonal. Lula at the plaintiff's table with Diane. Across the aisle, Glenn in a borrowed suit beside Brenner. First time Lula had seen Glenn since filing. He looked thinner, harder, desperate. Brenner stood, addressed Judge Rodriguez, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics. Your Honor, respondent was clearly manipulated by wealthy father who orchestrated an elaborate scheme to destroy a stable marriage. Mr. Payne's sudden appearance with luxury vehicle, hiring investigators, funding this divorce, all evidence of improper influence. We request full financial disclosure from Mr. Virgil Payne. Rodriguez looked skeptical. Mr. Brenner, Mr. Payne's finances aren't relevant unless you can demonstrate he's party to marital assets. Can you? His influence over petitioner's decision-making, that's not what I asked. Move on. Diane stood calm and prepared. Your Honor, evidence shows respondent engaged in adultery, financial deception, and depleted marital assets for personal affair. These are facts, not manipulation. She began presenting the case methodically. PI photographs projected on the courtroom screen. Glenn with Vanessa Torres. Timestamps, locations, body language unmistakable. Bank statements showing $14,400 in affair spending, highlighted in yellow. The credit card Glenn opened secretly. $22,000 in balance. Loan documents he'd signed without Lula's knowledge. Withdrawal records from the children's college funds. $12,000 Glenn couldn't explain. Mortgage default notices he'd intercepted and hidden. Each piece numbered, cataloged, cross-referenced. Brenner objected repeatedly. Illegally obtained. Violation of privacy. Diane countered each one. PI operated legally in public spaces. Lula authorized the financial analysis as joint account holder. All discovery properly disclosed. Judge Rodriguez reviewed the documents carefully, asking pointed questions. Then Diane introduced Lula's sworn affidavit. When the judge requested, Lula read a portion aloud. Her voice shook but didn't break. He told me my father was worthless. Made me believe it. Made me feel ashamed of my own family. At our dinner table in front of our children, he would mock my father's apartment, his car, his life. Pause. I said nothing, because I learned that agreeing was safer than defending. The courtroom went silent. Glenn stared at the table. Brenner whispered urgently in his ear. During lunch recess, Brenner approached Diane in the courthouse hallway. I stood with Lula nearby, just out of earshot. Brenner's voice was low, threatening. My client has information about Payne's business sale, potential tax irregularities. SEC might be interested. Diane's expression didn't change. Your client is welcome to report whatever concerns to appropriate authorities. Everything's documented and legal. Anything else? Brenner shifted tactics. Settlement offer. Glenn keeps house. Lula gets custody. No alimony. Clean break. Counter. Lula keeps house with children. Primary custody. Glenn pays $1,200 monthly child support. His debt, his responsibility. Take it to your client. Brenner's jaw clenched. He'll never accept. Diane turned to walk away. Then we continue. The afternoon session resumed. Brenner called Glenn to testify, attempting to present him as a devoted father, victimized by circumstances. Under Diane's cross-examination, Glenn stumbled. Couldn't explain the hidden credit card. Couldn't justify affair spending while children needed basics. Couldn't produce evidence of attending school events or medical appointments. Asked to name his children's teachers, he hesitated too long. Asked about their current grades, he looked to Brenner for help that didn't come. By the end, his hands gripped the witness box edge, knuckles white. Judge Rodriguez's expression had gone cold. The following week, Brenner played his last card. Glenn filed a motion for primary custody, claiming Lula's emotional instability and my improper influence created an unsafe environment for the children. Diane had prepared for this, called the children's school counselor as a witness, who testified they showed no signs of distress in their mother's care, that Glenn hadn't attended a parent-teacher conference in 2 years, that Lula volunteered regularly. Then Diane introduced a supplementary PI report I'd commissioned after the initial filing. Documented Glenn meeting with Vanessa 3 times after the separation began, including once when he'd claimed to be with the children. Photographs showed Vanessa at Glenn's new apartment. Judge Rodriguez called both attorneys to the bench, spoke quietly but firmly. They returned to their tables. Primary custody granted to petitioner Lula Payne. Respondent granted supervised visitation twice weekly, transitioning to standard visitation after 90-day review period. Outside the courthouse, early evening heat pressed down like a weight. Lula, Diane, and I walked toward the parking structure. Diane reviewed the outcome. Preliminary rulings favor us strongly. Final decree hearing in 6 weeks. He'll likely accept settlement rather than continue. Diane departed. Lula turned to me. He looked broken in there. Did you see his face? I had. Glenn's expression when the custody ruling was announced. Devastation mixed with rage, all of it directed at me across the courtroom. He blames you for everything, Lula continued, even though he caused it. Blame is easier than accountability. We walked toward the Rolls-Royce. Lula stopped before reaching it. This car, it started everything. No, his choices started everything. This car just made them visible. As I unlocked the doors, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life. I won't forget. Screenshot showed the message sent from Glenn's phone. I deleted it without responding, didn't mention it to Lula. But driving her home, I watched the rearview mirror more carefully than usual. 6 weeks later, I sat in the courthouse waiting area wearing a business suit. Mid-July morning, the air conditioning fighting against Miami's oppressive heat. Lula beside me in a borrowed professional dress, Diane reviewing final notes on her tablet, the final decree hearing, the end of the legal battle. 9 a.m. came and passed. The defendant's table in the courtroom remained empty. Judge Rodriguez entered at 9:03. All rise for the Honorable Judge Rodriguez. We stood, then sat. She reviewed the papers before her with evident disapproval at the empty table. In the matter of Payne versus Payne, where is respondent? Unknown, Your Honor, Diane said. He's been properly notified. At 9:07, the courtroom door opened. Glenn entered, disheveled, no attorney beside him. His suit was cheaper fabric, hung loose on a thinner frame. Face unshaven, not fashionable stubble, but neglect. Mr. Glenn, you're late. Where is Mr. Brenner? Glenn's voice came rough, tired. No longer retained, Your Honor. I'm representing myself. Rodriguez sighed. Pro se divorces complicated everything. Very well. This is the final decree hearing. Based on preliminary rulings and submitted evidence, I'm prepared to issue the final order. Do you wish to present any additional evidence or argument? Glenn looked at wrinkled papers clutched in his hand. Your Honor, I request reconsideration of custody and support arrangements. My financial situation is temporary. I'm a stable parent. Mr. Glenn, preliminary rulings address these issues. Without new evidence, the final decree stands as drafted. Glenn's composure, already tenuous, shattered. His voice rose. New evidence? You want new evidence? Her father orchestrated everything, destroyed my career, bought that car specifically to humiliate me. He pointed at me in the gallery. He's sitting right there. He manipulated her into this divorce. Rodriguez's voice hardened. Mr. Glenn, Mr. Payne is not party to these proceedings. Your accusations are irrelevant. Irrelevant? He hired investigators to spy on me, paid for her attorney. He's been controlling everything. Diane stood calmly. Your Honor, respondent is deflecting from his documented adultery and financial malfeasance. These outbursts demonstrate exactly why supervised visitation is necessary. Glenn spun toward her. Supervised? I'm their father. They need me. Mr. Glenn, compose yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. Your behavior in this courtroom supports concerns about stability. Glenn breathed heavily, visibly trying to control himself. Failed. I lost everything because of him. Pointed at me again. I sat motionless, expression neutral, didn't respond. Final warning, Mr. Glenn. Sit down. Glenn slowly sat, head dropping into his hands. Rodriguez read the decree aloud. Marriage dissolved, effective immediately. Primary residential custody to Lula. Supervised visitation for Glenn twice weekly for 90 days, then transitioning to standard schedule. Child support, $1,200 monthly beginning August 1st. College fund repayment, $200 monthly until the $12,000 was restored. Marital home awarded to Lula with full equity. Glenn's separate debts, the hidden credit card, the personal loans, the affair expenses, were his sole responsibility. Of the total marital debt, he would assume $240,000 of the $340,000 total. No spousal support either direction. Do you understand these terms? Yes. Glenn's voice was hollow. Do you understand child support begins next month and failure to pay can result in wage garnishment and contempt? Yes, Your Honor. Rodriguez signed the decree, handed it to the clerk. Copies will be provided to both parties. This matter is concluded. Outside, the morning sun was already intense. Lula, Diane, and I descended the courthouse steps toward the parking area. Behind us, Glenn emerged from the building. Diane noticed first, touched Lula's arm. Keep walking. Don't engage. But Glenn called out, Lula! She stopped reflexively, turned. Glenn approached. Diane positioned herself slightly between them. Glenn's face carried desperate pleading. Please, the kids are my life. Don't keep them from me. Lula's voice was tired but firm. The court decided visitation. Follow the rules, Glenn. Rules? You're letting your father write rules for our children? I finally spoke, voice quiet but carrying. The judge wrote the rules based on your behavior. Take responsibility. Glenn's desperation shifted to rage. Responsibility? You destroyed everything I built. You built nothing. You borrowed against everything, lied to everyone, betrayed your family. I simply stopped pretending not to notice. Glenn stepped toward me. Diane moved between us. Mr. Glenn, walk away. Now. His hands clenched and unclenched, breathing ragged. Finally he turned, walked toward the bus stop. No car anymore. Didn't look back. 3 days later, I arrived at Lula's house with printed real estate listings. I'd spent the weekend researching online, houses in better neighborhoods, better schools, 3 and 4 bedrooms. Sat at her kitchen table, spreading the listings with growing excitement. I've been researching. There's a house in Pinecrest. Excellent schools. 4 bedrooms, so the kids can each have their own space. I can make the down payment. You maintain the mortgage with child support income. Lula picked up a listing, studied it slowly. Or this one in Coconut Grove, closer to a good middle school for Ethan. The HOA maintains everything. Less work for you. I waited for enthusiasm. Got silence. Lula set down the paper. Dad. Her tone made me pause. I appreciate this. I do. But I can't. Confusion hit me. Can't? Why? These are investments in the grandchildren's. I need to breathe. I just got divorced. I'm still figuring out who I am without Glenn, and you're already planning my next move. I'm trying to help. I know. But it feels like control. Different control than Glenn's, but still control. The words landed hard. Visible impact. I'm not trying to control. I know your intentions, she said, gentler now. But I need time to make my own decisions. Stand on my own feet. Prove to myself I can. I sat in the Rolls-Royce outside her house afterward, hands on the steering wheel, engine off. Replayed the conversation, seeing it clearly now. I'd completed revenge against Glenn, but hadn't considered what Lula needed afterward. Space, autonomy, self-determination. Built the case for her freedom, then immediately tried to manage that freedom. I started the engine, drove toward my apartment. At a red light, I saw something familiar. Glenn's Porsche Cayenne on a flatbed tow truck, heading the opposite direction. Bank repossession tags in the windshield. The car he'd been so proud of at that first dinner, now being hauled away, but my satisfaction was muted by Lula's words. Back at the apartment, I sat on the sofa, looked at an old family photo, my deceased wife, young Lula smiling, a simpler time. My phone buzzed, text from Lula. Thank you for everything you've done. I mean it. But I need space to find myself. I'll call you when I'm ready. I love you. I typed a response, deleted it, typed again. Finally sent, I understand. I'm here whenever you need me. I love you too. Set the phone down face down on the table. Conscious act of giving space. Realized revenge had succeeded, but reconstruction required a different approach. Patience without agenda. Support without direction. Presence without pressure. I'd won the battle. Now I had to learn how to handle victory. 1 week after our conversation about the real estate listings, I sat at my desk reviewing financial documents. The mortgage statement for Lula's house lay beside my open checkbook. Payment due in 5 days. $2,200. I knew she didn't have income yet. Knew the collection calls were still coming. I wrote the check, addressed the envelope directly to the mortgage company, not to Lula, avoiding the appearance of giving her money, just eliminating an obstacle. Second envelope, check to the debt consolidation company, $180,000 to settle her portion of the marital debt assigned in the divorce decree. Clean slate. Both envelopes showed my bank routing but included no notes, no explanations. I mailed them on my way to the grocery store. That evening, my phone rang. Lula's number. Hey. Long pause before she spoke. Dad, the mortgage company called. Said my account is current. Overpayment applied to next month's. Did you? House is in your name. Wanted to make sure you kept it. Another pause. And the collection company called. Said my debt is settled. Dad, you needed a clean slate to start over, that's all. Silence then. Thank you. After hanging up, I noted in my ledger, $182,200 total. Didn't categorize it as loan or gift, just support. 2 weeks later, she called with a different tone, excited. I got a job, office manager at a medical practice, $42,000, start Monday. My happiness was genuine. That's excellent, congratulations. Tell me about it. We talked for 20 minutes. 3 doctors, scheduling and billing responsibilities, her commute. She sounded different, proud. The following Monday, she began her routine. Dropped the children at school, drove 15 minutes to the office, managed patient flow and paperwork, picked up the children at 5. Her first paycheck arrived 2 weeks later. She texted me a photo of the pay stub, framed on her kitchen wall. First money I've earned in 12 years, I responded. First of many. Proud of you. Week 3, she rearranged her living room furniture without asking anyone's opinion, painted an accent wall herself after watching a tutorial online, took the children school shopping with her own money, modest purchases, but her choices, small acts of autonomy building something larger. When I visited to drop off birthday gifts for the children, I noticed the changes. Different furniture arrangement, fresh paint, her laptop on the kitchen table with work spreadsheets, evidence of an independent life being built. I didn't comment on the changes, just asked about her work instead. Mid-August, Glenn's situation deteriorated further. His manager at the Hialeah dealership called him into the office. I learned this later, through Lula. Glenn, you've been late 4 times this month. Yesterday, a customer complained you smelled like alcohol. Glenn had defended himself, said he was handling personal issues. Handle them outside work hours. This is your final warning. That evening, he'd drunk more than usual. Called Lula at 9:47. She told me about it the next day. His voice was thick, slurred. Lula, I miss you. Miss the kids. We were family. Can't we? She'd interrupted firmly. You're drinking. Don't call me like this. But he'd continued. Everything fell apart. Lost everything. I need another chance. Please. Her voice had been sad but resolved. You had chances. Many chances. You made choices. I can't fix them. The kids need their father. The kids need stability, sobriety, responsibility. When you can show those things, the court will adjust visitation. Until then, this conversation is over. She'd hung up. The next morning, Glenn arrived at the dealership late again. The manager was waiting. Clean out your desk. We're done. Unemployed again. With Glenn's situation worsening and Lula working, I became an after-school presence for the grandchildren, not by inserting myself, but by Lula's request. Dad, could you pick up the kids Tuesday and Thursday? Stay with them until I'm home from work? I agreed immediately. Those afternoons became routine. I picked up Ethan and Sophie from school at 3, brought them to my apartment or stayed at their house depending on homework needs, helped Sophie with multiplication tables using a deck of cards, making it a game, taught Ethan fraction concepts using pizza slices, ordered actual pizza to demonstrate. No lectures about money or responsibility, just presence and patience. During one homework session, Sophie looked up from her math worksheet. "Grandpa, why doesn't Daddy live with us anymore?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people they love. Your mom made a brave choice to protect you. Your dad needs to work on himself. But you're loved by both of them, and by me. Ethan, quieter, asked a different question. "Are you rich?" I paused. "I have enough. What matters isn't having money. It's using it wisely and treating people with respect." Sophie thought about this. Daddy had a nice car, but wasn't nice. Exactly. Things don't make someone good. Actions do. Late August evening, after the children were asleep, Lula sat with me at her kitchen table. Coffee between us. She'd been quiet all evening, processing something. Finally she spoke. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. The car, the divorce, all of it." I waited. "For months, I thought you were being vindictive, getting revenge on Glenn for how he treated you." She held up her hand before I could respond. "Let me finish. But watching how you've been these past weeks, giving me space, helping without controlling, spending time with the kids without agenda, I understand now. You weren't getting revenge. You were showing me truth I was afraid to see." Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. "You saved us. Not just from Glenn, but from the future I couldn't see was coming. Financial ruin, emotional destruction. You showed me I was worth more than I believed." My voice came rough. "You always were. I just needed you to see it." She reached across the table, took my hand. "I'm sorry it took so long to understand." We sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the automatic sprinklers started on the neighbor's lawn, rhythmic sound through the open window, marking an ordinary evening in a restored life. My new apartment was modest but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one set up for the grandchildren. Twin beds with colorful bedding Sophie had helped choose. Bookshelf with age-appropriate books. Small desk for homework. The kitchen was larger than my studio had been, allowing actual cooking. The living room had a comfortable sofa and family photos on the wall. One from my hardware store's grand opening. Another recent one of me with Ethan and Sophie at the park. The afternoon before Sophie's 9th birthday, I arranged the living room for a small celebration. Balloons in purple and silver, her favorite colors. A homemade cake cooling on the kitchen counter. Vanilla with buttercream. Recipe from the internet. First cake I'd made in decades. Small stack of wrapped gifts on the side table. The doorbell rang at 4. Lula with Ethan and Sophie. Sophie rushed in. "Grandpa, you have balloons," hugged me. Ethan followed, more reserved but smiling. Lula carried a container with fruit salad, surveyed the space. "Dad, this place is perfect for you." "Perfect for us?" The kids needed proper space when they stay over. The celebration was simple but genuine. We played a board game. Ethan won, Sophie protested good-naturedly. I taught them a card game I'd learned as a child. Go fish with betting using pennies. Sophie loved the gambling aspect. Lula was amused. When cake time arrived, I brought it out with 9 candles. We sang off-key. Sophie blew out the candles, made a wish she didn't share. But she looked at her mother and me while making it. We sliced the cake. It was slightly lopsided, but tasted good. "Best birthday cake ever," Sophie declared. Ethan, practical. "It's pretty good, Grandpa. A little lopsided, though." "First cake I've made in 40 years. Lopsided is success." "Can we make one together next time?" Sophie asked. "I'll help," I agreed. Gift opening. I gave Sophie an art supply set. She'd shown interest in drawing. For Ethan, a science kid about electricity. He was curious about how things worked. Modest gifts, chosen thoughtfully. Sophie hugged me. "Can we do art together tomorrow?" "Absolutely." As the evening wound down, the children played with their new items while Lula and I cleaned up the kitchen. She said quietly, "They're happy, really happy. I can't remember the last time we had a celebration this relaxed. No tension, no performance, just family." She nodded. "Just family." Later, with the children watching a movie in the living room, Lula and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee. She looked at me directly. "I need to say this properly. You saved us. Not just from financial ruin. You saved me from losing myself completely." I started to deflect. She continued. "Let me finish. I was becoming a person I didn't recognize. Agreeing with Glenn's cruelty. accepting disrespect as normal, teaching my children that money matters more than character. Her voice was steady. You showed me truth, even when I didn't want to see it. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was hard. But you gave me a chance to rebuild as a real person, not Glenn's accessory. I just showed the truth. You made the brave choice to act on it. She shook her head. No, you created the conditions where I could act. Documented evidence, hired the attorney, stabilized finances. Without that foundation, I'd still be trapped, believing his version of reality. Pause. Thank you. Truly. I covered her hand with mine. You're my daughter. Protecting you isn't a favor. It's responsibility and love. From the living room, Sophie called out, Grandpa, Ethan says the movie's character can't do that. Tell him. We both smiled, the moment of gratitude giving way to ordinary family life. The following week, I met with an estate attorney, established an education trust fund for Ethan and Sophie, $500,000 total, $250,000 each, structured to be accessible only for qualified education expenses, tuition, books, housing at accredited institutions, distributions beginning when each child reached 18. The trust documents named Lula as trustee until the children turned 25. I also updated my will. The bulk of my remaining estate would be divided between Lula and the grandchildren, with specific provisions preventing Glenn from accessing any funds, regardless of circumstances. The attorney confirmed everything was legally sound, filed the paperwork. The following week, I invited Lula to my apartment, explained the trust structure, showed her the documents. Her eyes widened. $500,000 for their education? I nodded. They'll have opportunities I had to create for myself. No student debt. No financial barriers to their potential. She was quiet, processing. I don't know what to say. Say you'll make sure they value education not just for the money it leads to, but for knowledge itself. She promised she would. The following Saturday afternoon was sunny, warm September day. I picked up Ethan and Sophie in the Rolls-Royce. They were accustomed to it now. Novelty worn off, just Grandpa's car. Drove to a local ice cream shop in Coconut Grove. Parked in the lot. The children piled out. Sophie took my hand, walking to the entrance. We ordered. Sophie got chocolate chip. Ethan got mint chocolate chip. I got vanilla. Sat at an outdoor table. Miami sun warm, but breeze from the bay comfortable. Sophie swung her legs, eating ice cream. Grandpa, why do you have such a fancy car? I paused, expecting a different question. What do you mean? Like you're not show-offy. But the car's really expensive, right? Ethan added, Mom said you could have bought it a long time ago. Why didn't you? I considered my answer carefully. I bought it when I did because the timing was right. Having expensive things isn't bad or good by itself. What matters is why you have them and how you treat people, regardless of what you own. Sophie thought about this. So it's okay to have nice stuff if you're still nice? Exactly. Character isn't defined by possessions. It's defined by choices and how you treat others. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Daddy had a nice car, but wasn't nice to you or Mom. I didn't disparage Glenn. Your father made choices. We all do. Some choices lead to good outcomes. Some don't. The important thing is learning from them. Sophie finishing her ice cream. I'm going to be nice and have nice things when I grow up. I smiled. If you're kind and work hard, you probably will. We drove back to drop them at Lula's house. As they exited the car, Ethan paused. Thanks, Grandpa, for everything. Not just the ice cream, the weight of everything. Always. I watched them run to the front door where Lula waited, waving at me. I waved back, then drove away. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, allowed myself a small smile. Justice served, family restored, future secured, task complete. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.